address the coaching changes that were made today?
Well, as I said in the statement, this is just a decision I felt was best for the football team going forward.
And you'll be assuming defensive play calling for the rest of the season. Is Eric still the defensive coordinator?
Yes, Eric's the defensive coordinator. Eric and I will collaborate on putting the defenses together each week as we prepare and get ready to play. We're going to focus in on Cleveland, so we'll get together as a defensive staff and communicate and talk about what we're going to do going forward.
Ron, why did you feel this move is necessary?
So I just felt it was in the best interest of the football team going forward. We've got 4 games left. We're going to take them one at a time, and we've got Cleveland.
Good morning, Ron. How would you characterize your conversations with David Tepper since the loss?
I would just say they've been very good.
Has he given you any insight as to the direction of this team, where he wants you to take it, what he wants you to be doing?
Mr. Tepper and I talk about a lot of things involving our football team, and most certainly one of them is about the game that we just played. We haven't had an opportunity to talk about anything else other than that.
Forgive me, but you've never made a high-profile firing like this mid-season. Did David Tepper influence that decision?
No, Mr. Tepper didn't influence the decision. It's a collaborative effort between Marty Herney, myself, and Mr. Tepper. I most certainly keep them informed as to the decisions that I make going forward for this football team. The biggest thing is that that everything that I do for this football team is what I believe is in the best interest of this team. I believe that we do things to try and win, and at the end of the day, that's all I did was just try to put us, what I think was best for us.
Ron, with every single defensive assistant in their first year, complete turnover, it seemed, including defensive coordinator, how much behind-the-scenes responsibility is that for a defensive coordinator to manage? And is this kind of shift and rearrangement with you maybe collaborating a little bit more on the defensive side a way to alleviate that?
Well, what it does, and as the statement said, basically for the most part, Eric will focus in on the front 7 and I will work with the back 7 for the most part. Eric's expertise as a defensive line coach, a front 7 coach is very well noted. He's handled it for 7 seasons. And, my background has always been in the back 7, so it's an opportunity for me to help out and get involved there as well.
Ron, if you can clarify your conversation with Tepper today, it was more about yesterday's game and these staff
My conversation with Mr. Tepper after the game yesterday was about exactly the game. My conversations with him today really was about what I was going to do, the direction we're going to head as a football team.
And both Marty and Tepper were supportive.
Both Mr. Tepper and Marty are both aware, and they're both supportive of the decisions that I made.
Ron, what was kind of the final straw, if you will?
I wouldn't say there was a final straw. I just said that this is something, watching and looking, I just think that this puts me in the middle of everything as far as the defense is concerned, and working with Eric and continue to grow this defense as we go forward.
Would you say that the issues were more of a game prep or a teaching technique, or was there something specific?
As I said, I just think that this is what I feel is good for us as we go forward.
Can you tell us, how long have you been, I know you always have input on the defense, but play calls, how much did you help this week, and has it been further weeks past, or is this the first week that you did?
I've always had input into the calls on the defensive side, even when Sean and Steve were here. For the most part, I really got involved, yesterday as things unfolded.
Can you try to put into words your conversations with Jeff and Brady? Was it today? When did that happen?
Well, again, it happened today, and again, those conversations are private. As I said, I really thank them for what they've done for us. They're both solid people, good men, worked hard for us.
Ron, is it fair to say that maybe the turnover you had, and I know they were promotions, but 3 coordinators in 3 years sort of caught up with you?
To a degree. It's been trying, obviously, when you lose guys that have been in the system for a long time. And, as we go forward, again, it's about learning and growing and getting back to where we've been in the past, especially as a defense. And in light of the things that we've done in the last few weeks defensively, we've done some good things. A week ago, we shut down the number 1 rushing offense. This past week, we played against the number 1 total offensive team in the league and held them to 315 yards. So there are some things that we're getting better at, some things that we're doing. We just got to continue to grow.
When you have so much turnover and then you have the personnel you do and the expectations you do, how steep is that curve, that adjustment curve?
It's a steep curve, but again, it's what we're paid for. And again, when you make decisions, you make them because you believe that they're the best for this team going forward.
Does a defensive coordinator also, when maybe things aren't clicking along the lines, defensive line, secondary, for example, does a defensive coordinator have to then figure out ways to kind of cover the sores, for lack of a better phrase?
Well, what we try to do when you're coordinating is find the answers and find ways to improve and get better. And we'll continue to look at those things and continue to work at getting better.
Ron, you and Everett obviously worked together for a long time. You just praised him as he's kind of come through the ranks here. I know you were excited for him to get this opportunity as first-year coordinator. Knowing him the way you do, how do you expect he'll handle this new set of circumstances?
Oh, professionally. You know, Eric's a professional. He's done this for a long time, and he's been very successful at it. As I said, you know, his track record speaks for itself, especially dealing with the front seven, especially dealing with the front four. You know, I have a bit of experience at doing this, at play calling and putting defenses together, and I think it's an opportunity for me to work even closer with him to help him out as we go forward, you know. And you all got to remember your first time at doing something, you weren't perfect, and somebody had to help you, and that's really what I'm here for, is to help him as we go forward as a football team.
It seemed like a natural progression for Eric, I think, when you promoted him. I don't think you talked to any other candidates. Did you talk to any outside candidates for, like, your secondary job, for instance?
Well, if you remember, that all came at the you know, in the spring, late spring. So we were in a tough situation, and we had to go forward. And I thought continuity would be the best thing for us.
Did you try to reach? I kind of remember you maybe trying to reach out to some external folks, or
Well, we did that when the season first ended, and I had promoted Curtis. And, you know, so by then, you know, when you start talking about trying to do something in June or July, it's never a good time.
There was so much turnover with the organization this last spring, and obviously you and Marty getting extended was for stability. Was promoting a guy who's so well known, well liked in the locker room in Eric Washington, and has a successful track record, another move for stability in such an uncertain time in the organization's history?
Yeah, I would believe so, because again, you know, we do what we do. We've been doing it and had success with it for 7 seasons. And again, just going forward, trying to create that sense of stability for the players is about as important as it gets. So again, as I said, you know, I really appreciated what these guys have done for us, and again, now it's about, you know, improving and getting better.
Did you tell the players, and how would you characterize the reaction?
I just told the players, and you know, again, I think they had gotten wind before I had to tell them, so I'd say that they, you know, their reaction is what it was, and they just took it in stride, and you know, they'll go forward from there.
How would you characterize your play calling versus Eric?
I'm not going to go there. Again, I call plays based on the game and the feel of the game.
What was it like for you, Ron, kind of getting back into it yesterday?
It was interesting. You know, again, trying to you know, stay ahead of the offense and try to make sure we're putting them in the right position. And again, it's, you know, it's one thing that I've done. I've done it twice in my career, and I've been fortunate enough to have been successful.
You were down there calling plays and kind of being more immersed on that side of the ball instead of obviously being kind of a big picture offense-defense guy. Were you able to then see kind of a little bit more of the highlights of the problem areas because you're dealing with each section so closely at that point? I
think at the end of the day, you know, when you call plays, you're in tune and aware as to what's going on the field. I'm fortunate that I've got a couple other coordinators that I just go ahead and turn those things over to on the offensive side with Norv and special teams with Chase, and just try to focus in on what we're doing on the defensive side. Again, I just think that, you know, at this point in time, this is what's best for us.
I guess I'm asking, were you able to see more clearly, because you were so involved with the defensive side, more so, you said, than you had been this year, you were able to see more clearly where the problems?
Well, I'd like to say I see what I see as a play caller. I call plays based on what I think is going to work, and so that's what I did.
I think that Cam's play yesterday is indication that his shoulder is really bothering him. I know you backed him off in practice. Mm-hmm. Where do you weigh in on that? Do you feel like trying to practice him more?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we'll wait till the doctors get a chance to visit with him, and then I'll talk with RV about him and about the rest of the injuries that we have to deal with.
Coach, you said that you had helped with the defensive play calling. Was that something you had decided to do before the game started, or was it something that happened?
I think sometimes it's a situation, it's part of the circumstance. And so as we were going through this, I just felt, you know, the need to do it.
Coach, David Tepper is your boss. With all due respect, has he put you on notice or given you any ultimatums?
No, I'm not going to talk about what Mr. Tepper and I talk about, these type of things. And quite honestly, if you know Mr. Tepper, that's not his style. He's very upfront, very forward. And again, I've been very fortunate to have a good collaboration between him, myself, and the general manager.
To his point, a couple years ago, several years ago, you were able to share, I think, that Jerry had told you he would, wouldn't fire you in season.
Well, I shared that with you guys well after the fact.
Right.
And I just think that that's what everybody has to understand, that, I'm not going to deal in conjecture. What I'm going to deal with is in fact, and until, I see a comment that has his name attached to it as it being quoted, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to focus on my job, and my job is getting ready for Cleveland now.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Coach.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.